Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for being here Thursday, June 19th. Happy Juneteenth to everybody out there. So the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're off right now. Rest of the league is either wrapping up mandatory minicamp or also, enjoying some time off like the Jacksonville Jaguars before training camp gets kicked off. And we did learn yesterday training camp officially will be Jaguars rookies will be reporting a month from today. July 19th, veterans will report a little bit later than that, and then we'll get out on the practice field in late July for training camp. Going to be an absolute grind, going to be very hot, but going to be a lot of fun out there as well. So definitely very excited for it. And I figured right now was a good time to offer a pre-training camp 53-man roster prediction. The Jaguars, could they still make moves to their 90-man roster ahead of training camp? Absolutely they could. They might. But with the wave of veteran free agents that they signed a couple weeks ago, right before mandatory minicamp, it feels like the roster is pretty close to set as of right now in terms of the 90-man. And so we're going to get into the 53-man roster prediction. And one thing that I think is a little bit of a misnomer, people do like final 53-man roster predictions. It's really an initial 53-man roster, right? Like the 53-man roster for the Jaguars will change. It'll be initially set, at the deadline, right? As preseason is ending, and then it will change without question, right? Many times throughout the regular season and probably even ahead of the regular season. So it is the initial 53-man roster prediction that we're getting into here today. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like. If you have not already, please subscribe. You can, if you want to, drop your 53-man roster predictions in the comment section below. I know that would be a lengthy comment, but let me know what you think maybe a surprise could be to the 53-man roster in the comment section below. Really appreciate y'all being here. So we'll get it kicked off on the offensive side of the ball. Start at quarterback. I think they keep two. I think they keep Trevor Lawrence and Nick Mullins. When you look at the Jaguars' current roster, they obviously have Lawrence and Mullins, John Wolford and Seth Hennigan. Wolford has experience with, this system. Certainly, so does Nick Mullins. I think that Lawrence and Mullins are the one and the two. Very clearly, I think the Jags will try to stash Wolford and Hennigan on the practice squad potentially. And this is, whether you talk about what the Rams have done, what the Vikings have done, with Grant Udinski being a very important piece to what the Vikings have done recently and coming over and being the Jaguars offensive coordinator. You've seen teams that are unafraid to pivot at quarterback if there's an injury and bring in an outside free agent or make a trade. So I don't think that the Jaguars are going to play scared and try to keep guys on the 53 that they don't necessarily think deserve to be on the 53 at quarterback. I think they're going to keep two quarterbacks. I feel pretty good about that one. Trevor Lawrence and Nick Mullins. At wide receiver, I don't feel great beyond the top four. I really don't know how things are going to play out. So I kind of just went with my gut a little bit. Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, De'Ami Brown, Parker Washington. I think those are all obvious. The good thing, too, about Travis Hunter is that he's technically going to be a wide receiver and a corner, but he's only going to take up one roster spot. So that's going to be helpful when it comes to roster math for sure. I'm putting him at wide receiver in terms of the counting numbers here because I think he's going to play more on the offensive side of the ball. So I went with Trenton Irwin and Dorian Singer. Irwin is a veteran. He has made plays in the league. If you have to call on him to make plays on the offensive side of the ball at some point during the season due to injury, he feels like the guy currently on the roster who's most equipped to do that. He also has special teams experience. Dorian Singer is my sixth wide receiver, and I kept six. Don't know what the Jaguars will actually end up doing, but we kept six here. I think six is the most commonly kept wide receiver number. I tried to look throughout the roster at wide receiver and look for guys who, some of these younger guys who have a ton of special teams experience. Each one of the undrafted free agents does have some special teams experience. None of them really have a ton of valuable experience there. I I don't think that they put like Louis Rees-Zammit on the 53. I think that they can keep him as their international player. It really could be anybody of these undrafted free agents, and maybe they bring in another veteran. Who knows? But you've got Eli Pankall out of Duke, who's big, fast, athletic, started making some plays in minicamp. Chandler Brayboy, who has had some impressive reps too throughout minicamp. J.J. Jones is a big, smooth receiver. I think Darius Laster has struggled with his hands a little bit so far. I think Cam Camper looks a little bit just not athletic enough, quite frankly. You also have Joshua Cephas, who could compete. You have Austin Trammell, who could compete. I think right now, if you were just looking at guys that were on the roster last year, I think Joshua Cephas would have the inside track. I don't know what they're going to do here. I really don't. I went with Dorian Singer and Trenton Irwin because Trenton Irwin has the most experience out of anybody that could make it. And then I went with Dorian Singer because I think he's been the most impressive in terms of getting up and creating separation, catching the football. So it could go anyway. That's the big takeaway here from the discussion with the 53 at wide receiver. I really do think it's wide open for, maybe the last couple spots there at wide receiver. At running back, I think it's pretty cut and dry. Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, Bashal Tootin, LeQuint Allen. I think they keep these four guys. I think it makes sense. I think Etienne is the number one. I think Bigsby could be the number one in certain game settings, certain situations. I think Bashal Tootin is a guy they want to get involved this year pretty heavily, but also have an eye towards the future with him. And then LeQuint Allen, somebody who can be a third down back, pass protection, catch the ball out of the backfield, even line up at receiver at times if you need him to. And you've seen Etienne do that with success and Tootin as well. So they've got a lot of versatility in that backfield. I think they want to keep it that way. I have them keeping 4 tight ends: Brenton Strange, Hunter Long, Patrick Herbert, and Quentin Morris. I think that even though Johnny Munt does have experience in this offense, I think that even though he is a veteran, he's been there, done that, I just think that Patrick Herbert represents a lot more upside. And I think when you look at Quentin Morris, he's a younger, better version of Johnny Munt, in my honest opinion. So I just look at getting, you can probably keep Munt around too, on speed dial. I don't think anybody's going to be hitting it hard to try to sign him necessarily. And, maybe he makes it over a Patrick Herbert, and maybe it's Brenton Strange, Hunter Long, Johnny Munt, Quentin Morris. But to me, Herbert has a lot more upside. He dealt with injuries early on in his college career. He is a much better athlete than what you're getting out of Johnny Munt. He ended up having to be kind of that second fiddle tight end, the guy who had to line up in line a lot more when Terrence Ferguson kind of made his mark at Oregon. I think he's got a future in the league based on what I've seen throughout his collegiate career and so far in minicamp. So that's kind of a bold prediction, but I would not be surprised at all if Patrick Herbert's try to stash him on the practice squad and keep Johnny Munt around. But I do think the Jaguars tight end position is going to be critical, not as much in the passing game outside of Brenton Strange, but definitely in terms of getting that big personnel on the field and dictating defensive personnel and then taking advantage of that defensive personnel. I think they're going to be able to do that quite a bit. Offensive line I have grouped as one because there's so many guys that can play multiple spots. I have Walker Little, Ezra Cleveland, Robert Hainsey, Patrick McCary, Anton Harrison, Chuma Edoga, Wyatt Milam, Fred Johnson. That means Luke Fortner does not make the team. That means Jonah Monheim is not on the football team. I think they can very easily stash their 7th-round pick on the practice squad without having too much concern there. I don't think a lot of teams are going to be clamoring to go add the offensive lineman with the shortest arms in like NFL history, basically. So that's the group. Fred Johnson and Chuma Edoga have versatility. Wyatt Milam should have versatility. I think the situation here is you say, well, you don't have a clear and obvious backup center behind Robert Hainsey. on the active roster, to me, it's Patrick McCary. I think if Robert Hainsey were to go down, you would want to insert Patrick McCary at center and then have Ezra Cleveland and Wyatt Milam playing guard for you. I think that's very clearly the answer. And I might actually like that group better. I might think that's a better group than the actual, Robert Hainsey, Patrick McCary, and Wyatt Milam starting or Ezra Cleveland starting, because I think McCary would actually be an upgrade at center over Robert Hainsey potentially. That's my 2 cents there. But yeah, I've got 9 offensive linemen there. I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, that's only 8? Sorry, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so you can throw in maybe a Cole Van Lannon, a Luke Fortner. I think they'll keep 9. I think there will be 9 on the offensive line. Maybe Jonah Monheim they keep. There's a lot of different options when it comes to the very back end of the offensive line. You could potentially look at Sal Wormley, who they brought in as an undrafted free agent. You could potentially look at, like I said, Cole Van Lannon. Javon Foster, I think it's going to be an uphill battle for him to make this football team. 9 guys there on the offensive line. I've got them keeping on the defensive side of the ball 10 linemen. A couple of them can also do some different things and play off the ball, I think. But I've got at edge Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, Emmanuel Ogba, who's clearly edge 3 in my opinion, DeJuan Smoot, who they brought in for a reason, and then Dennis Gardeck / Jalen McLeod. I don't think both make the team. I think one of those guys makes the team. I think if Dennis Gardeck is healthy, it'll be him. He's a special teams captain. He's been an amazing special teams player, a leader, somebody who really the Jaguars would like Jalen McLeod to develop into that type of player, I think. But Gardeck is that type of player right now, assuming health. So that's what I've got. If Dennis Gardeck is healthy, I think he's edge 5. If not, I think it's probably going to be Jalen McLeod. Interior defensive linemen, I've got them keeping 5 players as well. Eric Armstead, Devon Hamilton, Mason Smith, Jordan Jefferson as that second big-bodied guy behind Devon Hamilton, and then also Tyler Lacey, who has some versatility as well. I think that when you look at the rest of that group up front, like who could make it on the interior of the defensive line, it's Tyler Lacey versus some undrafted free agents, and I think Tyler Lacey's experience and skill level and strength is going to allow him to make the football team over some of those other guys. And they can certainly, the Jaguars, try to stash some of those guys if they ended up liking them a lot on the practice squad. Looking at the linebacker group, I've got 5, Foye Oluokun, Devin Lloyd, Chad Muma, Ventrell Miller, Jack Kaiser. I feel like that's pretty cut and dry. The one who I would worry about potentially making the team, honestly, is Chad Muma. But I think he's good enough to make this football team and make some contributions on special teams, etc. So I've got them keeping 5 linebackers there. At safety, I've also got 5 being kept: Eric Murray, Caleb Ransaw, Andrew Wingard, Rayon Lane, Darnell Savage. That means the odd man out is Daniel Thomas. I don't like that. I like Daniel Thomas being on this football team. Such a good special teams player. And I think he's always been an underrated backup safety as well. But I think that the Jaguars are going to view this thing as, we've got really good special teams players in Andrew Wingard and Rayon Lane, who are also guys we feel we can get on the field at safety. That also means Antonio Johnson's an odd man out, actually. So it's a interesting competition at safety when you talk about adding 2 rookies to the group, when you talk about signing Eric Murray, still having Andrew Wingard, who I do not think is going anywhere. And then Darnell Savage just provides a lot of versatility on the back end. If there's any injuries, if anything goes down, like Darnell Savage could step in at safety, he can step in at nickel, he can do a lot for you. So that's why I have those 5 being kept. I would not like to see Daniel Thomas not make this football team, and it would be sad to see Antonio Johnson, who going into last year, a lot of folks thought, had a good shot, including myself, to develop into a decent starter in this league. But the NFL, not for long sometimes, right? At cornerback, I have them keeping 6 players, but technically only 5 because one of them is Travis Hunter, right? So you've only got 5 actually hitting the 53-man roster here because Travis Hunter I've counted at wide receiver already. So it's Tyson Campbell, Travis Hunter, who doesn't count, Jordan Lewis, Buster Brown, Jarian Jones, and I've got Jabbar Muhammad. And I think the back end of cornerback is wide open as well. I went with Jabbar Muhammad. I like him a lot, but you've also got DeAndre Prince, Christian Braswell competing to make the roster at cornerback. I think it would come down to one of those 3 players: Jabbar Muhammad, Christian Braswell, DeAndre Prince. All of them, I think, have a reasonable chance to make it. I went with Jabbar Muhammad because I was really excited about him in the draft this year. He was undrafted guy. Smaller guy. You've seen the Rams in the past kind of make do with smaller guys and get the most out of them, guys that maybe the NFL just said they're too small for us. Well, not too small for the Rams, maybe not too small for the Jaguars, Jabbar Muhammad. And that leaves your specialists: Logan Cook, Ross Madison, Cam Little. Very predictable there, outside of anything that were to happen with like injuries or anything like that. That's going to be the 3 special teamers, right? So I've got 25 on offense, 25 on defense, your 3 specialists. Travis Hunter is really an interesting piece to this 53-man roster because you kind of have him as 2 different players, but he only counts against the roster as 1 player. I think back end of the offensive line and back end of receiver, really there's a lot of competition for the back end of this roster at a lot of spots. I feel confident about quarterback. I feel confident about running back. Feel pretty good about the edge group, pretty good about the interior defensive line, pretty good about the linebackers. I think safety and cornerback could be all over the place. But we'll end up seeing here in the next couple months what this initial 53-man roster looks like for the Jacksonville Jaguars heading into the 2025 campaign. I think it's a good group. I think they're going to be well coached. I think they're going to be very competitive week in and week out. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe, and y'all have a good one.